Here's a blast from the past, and it also shows you why psychiatry is a fraud and how forced medication does not make sense. Even among psychiatrists, they disagree with each other, and they disagree with psychiatry as a whole. A blast from the past. These are old clips I've referenced in past videos, and I'm just going to put them together for you. Dr. Niall McLaurin first. You can tell these guys are the real deal. You can tell. Former head of Department of Psychology, Repatriation Hospital, Australia.
Within a few months of starting psychiatry, I was realizing there was something seriously wrong with it. It was immediately obvious to me that the psychiatrists were making claims that they couldn't have made, that they were making claims which simply were not justified in biology. But if you stand up and say that what you're doing, ladies and gentlemen, is not science, it's pseudoscience, then you are challenging what's holding the whole profession together. What's happening in psychiatry is that there's a general agreement there will be no criticism of the status quo. There will be no criticism. I think secretly they know deep inside that if anybody criticizes this or examines this too closely, it might fall apart. This is all held up. The skyhook that holds this palaver, this mess of jargon in place, is the single injunction: mental disorder is brain disorder. That is the single intellectual hook that holds this edifice in the air, that stops it all collapsing in a heap. They just make this claim: mental disease is brain disease. But that, as I've said, is an ideological claim. People are being told you have a chemical imbalance of the brain which is genetically determined, and you've got it for life, and there's nothing you can do about it, and you will forever be limited and restricted, and you must take these tablets, which will dampen your creativity, your sensitivity, your awareness, they will damage your sexuality. You've got to do this because you're sick, and we can see it, but you can't. Now that is that to me is the catastrophe that has to be exposed. The general public needs to know where their hundreds of millions of dollars of research money is going, and where their billions upon billions of dollars of treatment money is going, and above all, where their sons and daughters and mothers and fathers are going. And that's where it's at. Bugger the money. Excuse me, but bugger the money. It's the lives that count.
Exactly. Next clip. Now this is key. Remember, I have said in past videos that brain scans do not prove anything. No matter how many brain scans you've taken, no matter how many brain scans you compare, because we don't know what causes the activity in the brain. Sugar, for example, looks almost identical to cocaine use in the brain scans. Now listen to what this gentleman says, another psychiatrist.
That the cult of psychiatry keeps telling us is false. First, the idea that there is a known brain lesion causing mental illness. The truth is, we cannot tell who is mentally ill and who is not by looking at pictures of their brains or analyzing their blood. Psychiatrists had to invent their own book of diseases because pathologists would have nothing to do with them. It's called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, the DSM.
Now, I'm going to go on. Some of these groups are affiliated with CCHR, which is affiliated with Scientology. But now, consider this. Since when does it matter when a religion that has been stigmatized is believed by mental health professions? And if it's Satanism, if they're atheists or Satanists, it's okay. Or if they're secular humanists, magically it's okay. So they'll consider the religion of the professional if they can use it to stigmatize them and to downplay what they are saying. But they will not apply the same standard to themselves, a double standard. Nor will they consider the deeper implication of the attack on Christianity by psychiatry, which is disproportionately non-Christian, as far as who the psychiatrists are and what they believe, and what mental health in general believes. That's why there is no Christian perspective of psychology. Moving on. At least not taught in schools, if there is one. It's by a chosen few, right? Anyway.
The first major manufacturers and distributors of LSD in North America were not some sort of beatniks or people from Colombia or some shady criminals. The major manufacturer was Eli Lilly Company.
He's a psychiatrist.
Who's the current manufacturer of Prozac. In 1953, they got a contract from the CIA, a $400,000 contract, to provide a secure North American supply of LSD for mind control experiments. LSD was first used by psychiatrists and by CIA officers themselves, personally. Then they started using it in mind control experiments for brainwashing and interrogation. And then from there it spilled out into the general culture. This wasn't just a few rogue mad scientists in a basement somewhere. This was the leading chairman of departments of psychiatry at the major medical schools, grandfathers of 20th century psychiatry, editors of leading academic journals. One of the most amazing things I found out about is brain electrode implants. I found dozens and dozens of articles from UCLA, Tulane, Yale, and Harvard primarily, where a neurosurgeon at Yale, for instance, is writing in the mainstream medical literature about implanting electrodes in cats and in monkeys, and then controlling their behavior with a remote transmitter, and then doing exactly the same in children as young as 11 years old. These experiments were done on contract to the Office of Naval Research, the Department of the Army, and were done at the major medical schools. All these brain electrode experiments, LSD experiments, hypnosis experiments, Manchurian candidate experiments, violated basic medical ethics. It was disguised as medical research. It was purely military mind control, interrogation, brainwashing research. Another element of CIA military mind control experiments by psychiatrists is that it overlaps with chemical weapons, biological weapons, and radiation experiments. And all these horrible experiments, giving x-rays to pregnant women, feeding radioactive cereal to retarded kids, injecting retarded kids with viruses and bacteria. It's the same network of doctors who do the mind control. Many of the treatments in psychiatry are also used as methods of brainwashing and torture, not just in so-called third world countries or in dictatorships, but in North America. People we don't like politically and sociologically, we can identify them as mentally ill, and we can control their behavior. Military mind control experimentation is not in the past, it's in the present and the future.
I mean, that proves what I'm saying. All these things prove my videos beyond any doubt, okay? And they seriously question the morality of people who support psychiatry. How could they be so passionate supporters of psychiatry unless they've sold out to this oppressive system and our oppressors? How could they possibly, take such a stance of conviction, take a stance with such conviction, that is pro-psychiatry without having sold out to the status quo? How could they possibly? And here's my nigga, my favorite psychiatrist. He passed away, rest in peace, Dr. Thomas Szasz. He's the founder of CCHR. I'm not a Scientologist. I don't agree with him about Scientology. But the truth is the truth no matter who says it. And to say, well, it's just Scientologists saying that, you're a bunch of, the people who are saying that are a bunch of atheists. They're a bunch of Satanists. They're from minority perspectives. This is a majority Christian country. So for them to say, well, it's those people saying it. Well, how would that apply to you in a country that is 73 to 76% Christian? You're just a bunch of atheists. You're just a bunch of feminists. You're just a bunch of Satanists. You're just a bunch of eugenicists saying that. Anyway.
School authorities tell a mother, as you already heard, that her son is sick and needs to be on drugs. How in the world is she to know that that is simply a lie? How is she to recognize that what experts now call attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is simply not a disease? Now, such a mother is not an expert in the history of psychiatry. She does not know that psychiatrists have, for hundreds of years, used diagnostic terms, so-called diagnostic terms, to stigmatize and control people. I will only give you a few dramatic examples. When black slaves in the South ran away to freedom, it wasn't that they wanted to be free. They suffered from a disease called drapetomania. From drapetes, runaway slave, and mania. I'm not making this up. This was a legitimate diagnosis, just like attention deficit disorder is. Women, half the population of mankind, of course, if they were foolish enough to rebel against domination by men, well, then they had a serious disease called hysteria, which was due to their wandering womb. Now, none of those behaviors was ever a disease, and of course it's not a disease. But nor is attention deficit disorder a disease. No behavior or misbehavior is a disease or can be a disease. That's not what diseases are. So it doesn't matter how a child behaves. There is nothing to examine. If he's sick, then there must be some objective science to it, which can be diagnosed by physicians and objective tests. That's why, as soon as you go to a doctor, they take a lot of blood and take x-rays. They don't want to hear how you behave. When I went to medical school 60 years ago, there were only a handful of mental diseases. I think there were no more than 6 or 7. Now there are more than 300. And new ones are, quotes, discovered every day. Labeling a child as mentally ill is stigmatization, not diagnosis. Giving a child a psychiatric drug is poisoning, not treatment.
Bingo.
I have long maintained that the child psychiatrist is one of the most dangerous enemies, not only of children, but of adults, of all of us who care to the most precious and most vulnerable things in life.
Remember what I said about people who take advantage of people who are vulnerable?
And those...
Well, there you have it. You have views from psychiatrists who have been psychiatrists, at that point for 60 years. You have views from younger psychiatrists about CIA and how it's the same network of psychiatrists still around doing the same thing. The main question you should all ask yourself, why did they stop? Did they stop making weapons? Did they stop propaganda? Did they stop recruiting people in the army? Did they stop training soldiers? Why would they stop any forms of warfare? They have shown no signs of stopping. All the signs that they have continued, waterboarding, psychiatric abuse globally, and so on, are there. They didn't stop. Did psychiatry stop as a science? No. It was for the purpose of control. And the military cares about control. Intelligence agencies care, law enforcement care about control. These groups care about control, not about people. Why would the people who only care about control stop their most precious mechanisms of control? To them, that is. Not precious to us. They are poisonous. Slime using poison on us. Thank you. You can tell these guys are the real deal. You can tell. Former head of Department of Psychology, Repatriation Hospital, Australia.
Within a few months of starting psychiatry, I was realizing there was something seriously wrong with it. It was immediately obvious to me that the psychiatrists were making claims that they couldn't have made, that they were making claims which simply were not justified in biology. But if you stand up and say that disease, but that, as I've said, is an ideological claim. People are being told you have a chemical imbalance of the brain which is genetically determined and you've got it for life and there's nothing you can do about it and you will forever be limited and restricted and you must take these tablets which will dampen your creativity, your sensitivity, your awareness. What you're doing, ladies and gentlemen, is not science, it's pseudoscience. Then you are challenging what's holding the whole profession together. What's happening in psychiatry is that there is a general agreement there will be no criticism of the status quo. There will be no criticism. I think secretly they know deep inside that if anybody criticizes this or examines this too closely, it might fall.
Here's a blast from the past, and it also shows you why psychiatry is a fraud and how forced medication does not make sense. Even among psychiatrists, they disagree with each other and they disagree with psychiatry as a whole. A blast from the past. These are old clips I've referenced in past videos. And I'm just going to put them together for you. Dr. Niall McLaurin first.
Apart. This is all held up. The skyhook that holds this palaver, this mess of jargon in place, is the single injunction, mental disorder is brain disorder. That is the single intellectual hook that holds this edifice in the air, that stops it all collapsing in a heap. They just make this claim: mental disease is brain disease.